domestic violence.
He had pulled the handgun on the man who had attempted to get in between them. His wife had the common sense to grab hold of the child at that point, and they then got in the vehicle and sped away with the child.
The murder of a woman by her ex-husband raises questions about restraining orders.
You know anything about a restraining order?
Oh, there was tons. He's not supposed to be in Pickering. Yes. There's one on my house, one on her house.
Why is it that a violent offender who violates those conditions to stay away from his victim gets a second chance in this province?
The area of restraining order didn't work in this case, and may very well be something that the government has to take a look at.
A piece of paper, a legal document, was supposed to keep Jill Hadley safe. But the restraining order issued against her estranged husband wasn't much protection from a gun. Yesterday morning, Ralph Hadley shot her dead in her Pickering, Ontario home, seconds after neighbors rescued the couple's year-old baby. Back in January, Ralph Hadley was charged with assaulting his wife and told to stay away from her or risk arrest. But how useful are restraining orders in deterring domestic violence? With us tonight, Walter Fox, he's a criminal lawyer, and Eileen Morrow, the coordinator for the Ontario Association of Interval and Transition Houses, which advocate on behalf of battered women. I want to ask you, Eileen, obviously this is a horrendous story and a horrendous example of when things go bad, but let's put it in some perspective. How often, when restraining orders are granted, do situations end in extreme violence?
Well, I don't have statistical numbers for you, but I can say that restraining orders don't work very effectively, and that we often see situations where women are murdered and an order was written in that situation as well.
And you deal with them obviously at your transition houses all the time. You see women who are supposedly protected by these orders, but they're not, I guess.
Yes.
You see that a lot. Walter, what's a restraining order exactly? What's it supposed to do?
A restraining order appears to be a generic term for at least 4 different kinds of court orders. You can have a bail order, and a condition of a bail that the person is released on bail not go near a specified person. You can have a probation order after someone's been convicted, and the probation order can say that the person who's subject to the probation order ought not to go, prohibited from going near another person. You can get a family court order from the lower family courts, and those are usually obtained ex parte by a woman just going in.
Ex parte meaning?
Without anybody there, she just goes and sees the JP and it gets done. Or you can get an order from the Superior Court, which prohibits somebody from being in the vicinity of somebody else. So there's at least 4 different kinds. I may have left one out. There's a peace bond, which will also keep people separated.
Okay. I think we get the picture, but what are, Eileen, I mean, again, in your experience, you see people going and seeking these restraining orders. What are the criteria they usually take to a judge to get them?
Well, as Walter says, there are different orders, there are different criteria. Some orders are family court, some orders are criminal court, and you know, you have to present the evidence that you are in danger. But as Walter says, in some situations, the woman is there alone giving evidence. In some situations, you're dealing with a criminal
But does harm have to have been demonstrated?
No.
No?
It just has to be alleged. Woman comes in, alleges that she's in fear, the order goes. Depending, all I've pointed out is the different stages in the different kinds of processes that it can happen. But an allegation, a bare allegation by a woman is enough for such an order to go.
Even without a response from the other side?
Even without a response. In some cases, without a response from the other side. If you look at the numbers that I know about, there are 5 provincial judges' courts or lower criminal courts going full blast in this city at all times. There are between 5 and 10 men every day in each of those 5 courts put on such orders. You've got 50 men, between 25 and 50 men a week. That's what, 100 to 200 a month. That's about 6,000 a year. Or
in Toronto only?
In Toronto only, or 2,500. And how often do we have this situation develop?
So you're saying, obviously, this is rare. Thankfully, this is rare.
Thankfully, this is rare. And I agree with Eileen that the strength of the order really depends on the person who has been saddled with the order. Now remember, it's not a piece of paper, as was said in the introduction. It's an order made by a judicial officer, most of the time with somebody present there, with the person that's saddled with the order present, very often in the criminal courts, after they spent a night in jail on the cold concrete of a jail cell or of a police or the iron bed of a police station. And so these things have a very serious and a deterrent effect.
Okay, but again, in this case, apparently not, because this is a guy who had been in and out twice.
Because in domestic violence cases, you're dealing with someone who feels that no one has a right to tell him that he can't have contact with his partner. So you're talking about somebody who may have absolutely no respect for that order or anyone telling him what to do. And the order is not there just to prevent homicide. The order is there to prevent assaults, criminal harassment, and all kinds of criminal behavior that a perpetrator may use against a woman to confine her, to control her, and to keep her in fear and make her do what he wants.
I think we need
again,
to know.
I disagree with Eileen. This is the public image, this is the public story that's presented. But the fact is that everyone in the criminal justice system knows that when an order is made and as a bail condition, very often as a probation condition, that the husband or the male spouse not have contact with the female spouse, this order is violated time and time again. Most of the time at the instance of the woman.
Okay, I want to pursue that in just a moment, but while we were on the issue of how effective these things are and how seriously the justice system treats them, there was an awfully powerful question asked today in the Ontario legislature by Frances Lankin, one of the NDP members. Let's play that tape and then get you to discuss what the answer to her questions might be. Roll tape, Sue.
These two people were already in your system. The estranged husband was already in anger management. I am telling you, he was charged with assault in January, released on conditions to stay away from her. He was charged again in February with assault and with violating those conditions. He was released again on bail with more conditions. Why is it that a violent offender who violates those conditions to stay away from his victim gets a second chance in this province?
That's a pretty good question. What's the answer to that question?
I'm not sure what the question is. There was a judicial process held. In the past, he had been released on the signature of his wife. She was the one who wanted him out. On the last occasion, he was released on the signature of his parents. The judicial officer making that decision had every reason to believe that he would obey that order and stay out of Pickering. The problem is that people believe that these kinds of events that happen in Pickering happen all the time. They happen very rarely. Once is too often. Violence can't be condoned anywhere. You can't support violence anywhere. The statistics are that in the province of Ontario, 40 women a year. One is too many, but 40 women a year are killed by their spouses. If 40 are killed by their spouses, you can't blame the system each and every time it fails.
Well, but I do want to look into it, though.
30% of women in the province of Ontario experience criminal violence by their intimate partners. So not just homicide, rape, sexual assault, criminal harassment, and all kinds of other crimes, which they have a right to be free and safe from.
Okay, you brought up something earlier about how when restraining orders are broken, it's very often the woman who initiates the breaking of it. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
That in itself is
Give me
a
a for
crime.
instance on that.
Well, for instance, there's a problem on a Thursday night in a family. The woman phones the police arrive, there's a zero tolerance policy, she makes the allegation she's been assaulted, he gets arrested. He's released the next morning not to go home. That's a standard condition. Now, she's got her in-laws coming for the weekend, there's a mortgage payment due the next day, any one of 1,000 ordinary, everyday domestic situations arise. She takes the position, the order doesn't apply to me, it applies to him, which is not the position in law. She knows about the order, she's party to the order having been granted.
So what are you going to say? You're saying...
So she'll call him and say...
initiate the contact.
And initiate the contact.
And say, I need your help, what, buying some groceries or whatever?
Whatever.
And
now, and everybody knows that goes on, and nobody will do anything to deter her because of this overlay, this slant in the system. I think Eileen is right. Probably 30%, those are the statistics that show that women are assaulted, 30% of all women in the province. 30% of all men in relationships in the province are also assaulted. We don't charge women. I think the studies that don't include female violence against men, against males, are suspect.
Well, you name me the number of times that women have gone after men, murdered them, and committed suicide in front of their children.
I don't think, I'll agree with you.
Yes.
At that margin, at that extreme, but how many times does that happen? 3 times a year in a population of 11 million people?
Well, you're leveling and equating these situations, and they are not equal.
Well, leveling and equating what situations?
Men and women, in terms of violence, and they are not equal.
Well, I disagree with you.
I mean,
and that's the problem in the system. That's why the system doesn't work, because it only focuses on one end of the problem. Violence is violence. And when we get the system to focus on female violence as much as it focuses on men violence, we have a chance of eliminating these problems.
But you have, I think, both told us tonight that this is thankfully an extremely rare case.
Yes.
So would the justice system be better off focusing on those truly violent cases and only use restraining orders where there really is a serious chance of violence happening, and not, you know, give out 5,000 or 6,000 a year as you suggested earlier? Is that a better way to go?
But how do we predict? How do we know? We can't know. It's human nature.
And
there is a dynamic often between the people involved, between the male and the female involved.
Okay. Walter Fox, Eileen Morrow, thank you for this discussion tonight.
Thank you.